Welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Life. This is Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is Allison Katskowski. Allison is a veteran swimmer, former bodybuilder, and lifelong fitness enthusiast who has spent over 30 years helping thousands of people transform their lives to achieve lasting strength, health, and longevity. As the owner of CU Fitness, she has evolved her business into a powerful hybrid model, now guiding leaders and entrepreneurs in the wellness space to grow and innovate themselves and their businesses with both online and in-person offerings. Through transformational retreats and expert consulting, Allison empowers others to design impactful, profitable experiences that truly change and transform lives. Welcome to the podcast, Allison.
Thanks for having me, Peggy. It's great to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation because I'm all about mindset. As a former athlete myself, fitness is a daily routine, and we're
Yeah,
all like entrepreneurs. So I'm
yeah.
I'm loving how you blend all of this together, and I'm interested in hearing about your hybrid model. But before we get started, can you please just share just a little bit more about you, your personal journey, and how it has led to where you are today?
Oh wow, it's been quite the journey. So when people ask me that, it's always like I always say, I'm the perfect example of somebody who's living a plan B that became a plan A, and it
Okay.
became a plan A quickly. You shared when we started that I was a competitive swimmer for a lot of years
Mhm.
and got into
Mhm.
weightlifting when I was a teenager and continued that when I was in school. And I always wanted to go to physical therapy school because I wanted to work with athletes. I wanted to help them rehab from injuries. And so that plan did not work out. And instead, I decided to pursue, graduate work in exercise science, thinking that I could make a career in the fitness industry. Totally a
Mhm.
plan B, wasn't even on my radar when I was planning school and all of that. And it
Mhm.
was one of those decisions, Peggy, where, you sort of like say, okay, this is what I've got. I'm just going to go with this and see where it leads me.
Mhm.
And I have to be honest, it was like once I made that decision, everything started falling into place for me. I
Mhm.
started getting what amazing opportunities, like introduced to people that connected me to other things. And I can really say with 100% certainty, I would not be sitting here today talking to you had I not made that decision. I really
Mhm.
believe that.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
also believe that sometimes when one door closes, another door always opens, right? We always hear
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
So I went to work in the health club industry when I got out of school. I had thought for a while I might want to do corporate fitness, but I realized quickly that wasn't my jam because I wasn't really cut out to stay in a box and follow like
Mhm.
a classic typical routine. I knew I was an
Mhm.
entrepreneur at heart. My first business was a lemonade stand when I was 8 years old,
Hey.
right?
Yep.
Right. Most people listening can probably relate to that if they're business
Oh
owners,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
So, and then when what I really figured out when I was working for the gyms is how much I loved working with people. I did that when I was a student. It helped me actually get through school. And I really missed it. I like the management. I like learning the business end. I like, I'm a good communicator. I'm a good salesperson. It's like I understand how all that fits together,
Mhm.
but I really loved working with people and helping them achieve their goals. And
Mhm.
so I had this harebrained idea one night to quit my job and start my own business. Not really a plan. We didn't have an online space back then. That was in 1997 or 1998.
Yep.
And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to try this and see what happens. My parents thought I had lost my mind. They were like, you have all this education and what's your plan? And I was just like, I got to try this. If I don't try it now, I'm not going to try it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And everybody that I talked to that year, everybody said, if you can get through the first year, you'll never go back. And that's completely 100% true.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I just burned up myself. I had my cell phone and my old laptop, and I had an old stability ball that I used for a chair. I'm not kidding you. And I just got on the phone and called people,
Mhm.
and I just made it work. And within 2 or 3 years, I was in my first big brick and mortar studio, and then I expanded and opened a second one several years later. And
Wow.
so now, I'm not in the studio model anymore. I sort of
Mhm.
downsized a few years ago, and that's when I created my hybrid model after the pandemic.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
So now this is what I really love. I'm doing everything now in my business that I've always
Mhm.
wanted to do. So
And it's funny how that works out,
I know, right.
but we
It's
don't
a
we don't
very
have the
crazy,
plan.
it's a very crazy story because to a lot of people on the outside, it just didn't make any sense, right?
Mhm.
It's like, why would I risk a really good career where I could move up in corporate, where I could really like, achieve all of those goals? It just wasn't where my heart was. I wanted to be a business owner.
Mhm.
And, I sort of learned as I went along and I bootstrapped it for, a couple of years to get going. And I just think that today, if you start a business today, there's so many more tools and things that are available to you, right? With
Mhm.
online
Right.
being what it is and all social media, we didn't have any of that back then.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Right.
think my
Right.
first email address was a Hotmail account,
Yeah.
and it was like that's just what we did.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when I think about what we did back then and what we do now, the basics really haven't changed. You still have to
Mhm.
be able to talk to people. You still have to be able to sell and have a plan and all of that, and really be able to see like a year or two down the road where you want to be.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And all of that, I mean, when you were talking about, oh, how many people like, oh, are you crazy? Like,
they
what's going
did.
on? Like, how
They
do
did.
when there's no evidence, that this is going to work out, because this can apply to anybody in life because we
Totally.
run into
Right.
hard things.
Right.
So what happens, like, it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole in our heads about, oh yeah, like believe in everybody else that they're doubting. Well, maybe I should doubt too. And yeah, I don't know, but and then you get all sort of mixed up. Like what happens in our minds, kind of our mindset, and when there's no evidence that this is actually going to work out and the plan is
Well,
kind of fuzzy, what
I think
happens?
every business owner listening understands that there are plenty of times in business when it doesn't look like things are working out.
Hmm.
And that's probably the most important. That's probably that's probably more important to be connected to your vision and where you want to go than when things are going really well. Because I think it's really easy to be motivated and inspired when you've got your appointments are full and all of that. But
Yeah.
when we're in our slower seasons, and there's slower seasons in every business and every industry,
Hmm. Oh
and there are
yeah.
times of the year where things just don't seem to be like as busy. But there are
Hmm.
also seasons of growth and there's seasons of change and all of that. And I just think that, today's world, I think if you're a business owner, makes it really hard to do that. There's a
Hmm.
lot of comparison
Hmm.
going on. Social media doesn't help with that. There's,
No.
a million and one opinions on there about how to do this and how to do that. And so for people who really haven't been in the game very long, or maybe started when online got really big, it's like I think for those people, it can be really difficult to, keep working toward the goal that you want. But I
Mhm.
think the best piece of advice I can offer is that you have to remember why you started. And I know
Mhm.
that sounds really simple and commonplace, but you have to remember why you started. You have
Yeah.
to. And
Yeah.
you have to check in with that from time to time because, people always say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. But the truth is you have to believe it first and then you'll see it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't have a vision of where you're going, how do you know if you're going to get there? Your why is so important because it's your
Mhm.
vision.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
you
and I
don't
just think
have
that
that,
that's where you really have to check in with yourself. And it's one of the, I mean, I don't even want to tell you how much I've had to work on my mindset since the pandemic. It's like it, but it's completely transformed how I see my business and how I see my
mhm,
growth too. And I just feel like for anyone listening who is a business owner who maybe is in a season where they're wondering what's next, or maybe they're in a season where they're questioning whether or not they're doing the right thing,
mhm,
the first place you have to always go is you have to check in with what's in here and like, why did I decide to do this?
mhm,
Why is this so important to me? And where is it that I really want to go? Because it's so easy to start making decisions from what we see and where we are today. And I'm not saying
mhm.
you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't ignore like what's in front of you, but you have to be focused on where you want to go for the future too.
Right. Because it has to align from the inside out. Your
Mhm.
why, your vision, what feels like what you really want to do,
Mhm.
got to feel aligned
Yeah.
because you can get stuck just
Mhm.
looking all around and listening to
Yeah.
everybody and not going anywhere
Well,
and feeling.
it seems like everyone's got their own opinion these days.
Mhm.
Everybody's an expert. Everybody knows a lot about this and that and the other. And I just think
Mhm.
right now it's so important that you be authentically who you are, that you be open and transparent, and that you know, share openly about what your struggles are and what you've learned, and be honest with people. Don't just tell somebody this story because it sounds good. You know,
Right,
I think the
right.
coaching industry right now is that we're seeing a lot of evidence of that. There's just been a lot of people out there over promising and under delivering, talking about things and promising things they have no business promising. And so there are a lot of people who have been burned, unfortunately. And so
Yeah,
we have to
yeah,
get back to, you know, the basics. We have to get back to just being real human beings.
yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that, you had to transform a lot of your mindset during this.
Mhm.
Can you give a few examples to the listeners about what that looked like to you?
Well, I mean, coming from a brick and mortar in-person business model to
Mhm.
going to operating online and still doing a little bit of in person, like probably
Mhm.
20% of my business is in person, you know, maybe a little bit more if you count retreats. But I
Uh-huh.
think for me, it was the first step was just checking in with what I really believed was possible. You know, I think, and I know that sounds like woo and all of that, but it's not really that. It's just
Mhm.
it's really checking in with, you know, asking yourself, what is it that you really want? And
Mhm.
where is it that you really want to go? And
Mhm.
is what you're doing now actually getting you there? Because if you keep doing the same things that you're doing now in the same way, you're going to keep producing the same results.
Right.
And it's
Right.
really hard to do. I mean, I get it. It's really, it's difficult to move away from something that you've always done, a system that's
Mhm.
always worked, you know.
Mhm.
And for me, operating in that in-person capacity, which the biggest struggle that in-person, especially in the health and fitness industry, face is the time for money grind. It's like learning
Mhm.
to adapt and change from that to more of a monthly recurring revenue, you know, more consistent type model. But in
Right.
order to do that, you have to think outside the box with your offers. You have to really know what it is, the
Mhm.
transformation that you deliver for your people. And I
Mhm.
just think it's very easy to get complacent and just keep doing the same thing because it's always worked. And,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of people are fearful for moving away from that. And,
Yeah.
you know, while I
Do you
can completely understand that, I think at some point you have to like sit with it and say, you know, this isn't working anymore. This is not going to get me to where I want to be. And you have to
right.
be prepared to dig in and do the work.
Yeah. I mean, digging in and asking yourself questions because things
Yeah,
change,
yeah,
life changes,
yeah.
circumstances change, a lot of things changed after the pandemic and we have to readjust. But
Mm-hmm.
it is really kind of digging into what your core is
Mm-hmm.
and then looking at what it is that you want to go. And you have to think outside the box because these are new things.
Yeah,
These are
yeah,
new ways of dealing with
yeah,
things.
yeah.
And that can come around. So how do you keep yourself inspired to like still dig into what you want and offer people what they need? How do you?
That's a really interesting question. I think for me as a coach, it's really just learning to just be a really good listener. I think we have to really check in with ourselves and make sure that we're taking ourselves out of every story. You know, being
Mm-hmm.
neutral is so important. And it's so easy in today's world to get activated by something, to get really charged up about something.
Yeah.
And our tendency is to react. You know, our tendency is to, you know, react in the moment. But I think what we have to learn to do better is listen more to what people are saying, you know, and ask better questions. Because
Mhm.
for me as a coach, it's like that's what I do all the time anyway. I'm like, tell me more about that. This is what you said. Tell me more about that.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what I think or believe, you
Right.
know, and we could
Right.
be on two completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but I'm going to ask the same question every time. I'm like, you know, tell me what I walk away with here. What does this look like for somebody? You know,
Right.
not here's what I think you need to do. You know, I
Yeah.
think we have to learn to hold the space and the vision for the people that we work with. And
Right.
when you're building a hybrid model, that's probably even more important than when you build in something in person or online. But when you're trying to do
Mhm.
both, I think what you
Uh-huh.
have to get over in your mind is that it's still one business. You're just working with people in two different ways. And
Mhm.
there's a learning curve with that. And so you have to start thinking about the fact that, you know, online is really infinite potential in terms of people that you can help. So if
Right.
you
Right.
operate in person, in today's world, it really doesn't make any sense not to have some way to do what you do online. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
2020 taught us that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can work, but
Yeah,
people still need that personal
they
touch.
do. And I think you're seeing evidence of that now. I think people today in 2026
Hmm.
want in person. I think we're seeing a resurgence of that. So for
Hmm.
people that operate in person businesses, it's great.
Right.
But the online is not going anywhere. And I mean, in
Yeah.
fact, I'll argue that the online is only going to continue to get bigger.
Right.
And
Right.
especially now with AI and everything, it's like that human connection is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely need that connection. We are social beings, and somehow there's an energy lost
Hmm.
online that we
Hmm.
can't get when we're
Hmm.
in person. And
100%.
so it's
Yeah.
so real, and it can be more impactful in an
Hmm.
in-person type atmosphere
Hmm.
versus everything online.
Hmm.
So, what are some like tips and ideas that you usually share with clients about, just trying to, get through life the way it is,
Hmm.
come up through some hard times? What are some of your core tips and tricks, I guess, to
Well,
clients?
I think I'm just going to repeat what I said before. I
Okay.
think you have to make it a regular practice, not just check in when things are bad. Because
Hmm.
I think it's human nature to just freak out when things are bad.
Yeah.
We say, well, shit, the clients aren't showing
Hmm.
up. Well, the money's not in the bank. Well, what am I going to do? And we tend to be reactive. And
Hmm.
anytime we stay in that state, we're never
Hmm.
going to be thinking of solutions that could work. So I
Yeah.
think what we have to really try to do, number one, is remember why we're doing it.
Hmm.
Connect, tap in, even if you got to take a time out, tap in and say, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why does this
Yeah.
really matter? And is this part of my bigger vision? And
Hmm.
then I think the
Hmm.
next question we have to ask is, what is this situation teaching me? Not what is wrong with this situation. Why aren't
Hmm.
people buying? I've heard that a lot probably in the last 6 months off and on from a lot of my clients. Well, people
Yeah.
just aren't buying. It's the economy. People just aren't buying. And I'm like, that's not true. You do
No.
you have any evidence for that? That's not true. Tell me where you see that people aren't buying. That's not written like it's on a newscast somewhere.
Right. Right.
People are
Right.
buying every single day. They just
Yep.
are.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so what you have to look at is instead of saying people aren't buying, this isn't working, then I think a better question to ask is, why aren't they buying? What is it that they really want?
Hmm.
What am I
Hmm.
offering and where's the disconnect? What is it that people why is this not working?
Hmm. Yeah.
And you have to get really that, and that's what I mean by taking yourself out of it. You have to, and it's hard because we're so attached to our work.
Yes.
I mean, my coach always has to remind me we can't read the label inside the bottle.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just we sometimes can't see what's wrong because we're too close to it.
Hmm.
So, whatever practice works for people, whether it's daily, whether it's every other day or 2 or 3 times a week, I think you kind of have to have a meeting with yourself and remind yourself, of
Hmm.
what that vision is, why you're doing this and why it's important,
Right.
and then one other tip I'll offer is I think it's important as entrepreneurs to ask ourselves, is what I'm doing really exciting me?
Hmm.
What do I really
Yeah.
love about my work? What would be
Yeah.
really fun to create? What would be really fun to do? Because we can get kind of stuck in a rut where we're kind of doing the same thing. Well, it's always
Hmm.
work. There's no reason to change it. I don't have time to think about anything else.
Right. Right.
So you have to give yourself that time to dream too. You really
Right.
do.
Right. I like to put things in examples, and we're both fitness people, and so as you're using all of these tips and tricks, can we wrap it in a box of saying, hey, like my fitness routine,
Mhm.
back when we were, athletes and probably in college and school, we
Mhm.
had our set, we had
Right.
practices at a certain time,
Right.
this is what we did, and then life happens, we get out of that, we
Mhm.
find and we still think that exercise is a certain thing, but then, we're getting older. And for me, I'm getting in, mid 50s here. Well, life is, bodies change. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't do that what I used to do. So
Mhm.
can you can you kind of talk about what you've been talking about in tips and tricks and mindset and wrap it in a health or fitness type
Yeah, of
example?
course. Yeah, absolutely. I think what we have to remember is from a health and fitness perspective is that our mind and body is the engine to which is going to get us what we want, whether you're a
Hmm.
business owner or not.
Hmm.
You know, whether you're out there listening and you want to grow your business or whether you're just thinking about how can I take better care of myself.
Right.
What we have to understand is the buck stops with us. Okay. And we can use the excuse, I'm busy, I don't have time. Everybody's busy.
Yeah.
And the
Yep.
biggest lie that you're ever going to hear is that I'm going to do it when things slow down because things never slow down. They don't. Something else. As soon as you finish something, something else will take its place.
Yep.
So it has to become a priority and be important. Now, that's not to say that you can be doing all the things and
Hmm.
legitimately paying attention to your priorities, and there literally is no time. But that's where I have to challenge people and say, how can we think about this different? For
Hmm.
example, when it comes to activity, one of the biggest problems that we're facing as a population, especially since 2020, is people are sitting more,
Yep.
way more than they ever used to. Now they're standing desks and they're like these fancy little treadmills that you can put under your desk and all that to get your steps in. But to be honest, even a lot of that doesn't work for people.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
still very easy to rely on the fact that, well, I work out for an hour a day and that's enough, but it's really not enough.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Right.
the truth is that you have to pay attention to what you're doing, what I like to say, the other 23 hours of the day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
if that seems like a heavy lift for people listening, ask yourself, how can I work in some activity throughout the day without reinventing the wheel? One of the best tips I
Hmm.
can offer is set your phone or your clock or whatever once an hour and get up.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
a 5 or 10 minute walk twice a day instead of relying on that 30-minute window that you may or may not work out.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second
Yeah.
thing is really disconnect from your devices, like have a hard stop, like at the end of the day, and
Hmm.
make
Hmm.
that decision and have your own back when it comes to that. Because the more that we're connected, the
Hmm.
more we stay turned on in our minds, and the harder it is to settle down. Then we
Hmm.
don't sleep as well, and the pattern just repeats.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
give yourself a hard stop when it comes to that. And then the last thing I'll say is do not ignore strength training. As you get older, this is even more important.
Hmm.
So, and start with body weight. If you're not a gym person, the good thing
Hmm.
about today is there's a million and one things available on YouTube that are free. You can reach
Yep.
out to me for some tips. I'm sure you can help people with tips.
Hmm.
Start at home, do body weight, make it a
Yeah.
priority. Because if your
Yeah.
mind isn't fit and your body, mind and body are not fit and strong, you're not going to go very far.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And coming from all of that, I mean, we know it's basically taking personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And we know we want it the easy way,
Yeah.
but it really comes down to us. We have to make that decision. We have to make that choice that is important to us. It's a priority. We have to put it into a why. Why
Mhm.
do we want to um, work out when we don't feel like it? Why do we need to move more throughout the day when, it's so easy, it's so much easier just to sit in
Yeah.
front of our
It
computers.
is. But the
And
truth
so,
is that the ironic thing is that when you move more, you have more energy.
yeah.
So if you find yourself having an energy crash in the middle of the day, or you get brain fog at 3 or 4 o'clock, or you're writing and you literally forget what you're doing, which it happens, I mean, it happens to everybody, then you probably need to be moving more. And the science is clear on that. When you get up and you give yourself a 5 or 10 minute movement break, then your brain literally clears out and the ideas start popping in more.
Yeah. Yeah, we have so much research on that. I mean, for
Yeah.
me, I love to take walks, and that's
Mhm.
when I can think the best. Like ideas
Yeah.
come,
Yeah.
and so there's so much research out there that it is important for us to get up and move, kind of to shake out the cobwebs, but we
Hmm.
have to prioritize it. We have to connect it with our vision of what we
Yeah.
want and
Yeah.
and make that just really real for us. That is
Hmm.
important. But we're in a science experiment every day. You
Totally.
don't have to take our word for it because you
Yeah.
can do it on your own,
Totally.
right? Like on days that you're feeling really good, what did you do?
Hmm.
What
Yeah.
happened over the last, 2, 3 days? Did you eat
Hmm.
better? Did you sleep well? Did you move
Yeah.
more? I mean,
Yeah.
you're your own experiment, so you don't have to let us tell you.
Yeah.
Even if sometimes I feel like we're just saying the same thing in a
Hmm.
different way. but we still don't want to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Like we want something new and flashy
Well,
that's
but
going
the
to be,
basics work. That's why we call them the basics. That's the reality of it, is that we want to reinvent the wheel and come up with something shiny and new because we lose interest. And that's what I was saying earlier, where that's part of the problem, I think, today with people is that, you know, so many people just don't have the stick-to-itiveness, the ability to really stay the course and to keep doing, repeating,
Mhm.
even if
Yeah,
it's boring, it works.
right.
There's a reason why we call these things the basics.
Yeah. They're foundational pieces.
Yeah.
Do we have to like spice them up a little bit and put a little sequence on them or something to make it more interesting to us? How can we make the basics
Hmm.
a little more interesting, a
Well, I
little
mean,
exciting?
let's say let's say for people listening, maybe you used to be in a routine and maybe you just haven't been as consistent, or maybe you're just
Mhm.
not good
Mhm.
about doing it regularly. Maybe, you do it one week and then you miss 2 weeks and whatever. It's kind of like you're kind of like a yo-yo. Then,
Mhm.
maybe instead of working out at home, look at going and taking a class somewhere once a week to kind of change things up. I promise you, you're going to work harder when you're with a group of people or when you're with a
Yeah.
coach than when you're on your own.
Mhm.
And you have more accountability. Because here's the other thing, human beings suck at being at accountability.
Yeah, we do.
We're not good at follow-up. That's why we have coaches. That's why we
Mhm.
do things where we have accountability.
Mhm.
So, you have to think about what kind of support is actually going to work for you. So if working out at home all the time isn't the answer, then look at joining a class. Look at looking
Mhm.
for a training buddy or a walking partner or
Mhm.
somebody to say, hey, I need to check in with somebody once a week.
Yeah,
You have to look at set yourself up to be successful.
right.
We put a lot of pressure on ourselves and think, I should know how to do this.
Mhm.
This really isn't
Yeah.
all that hard. I should know how to do this. And in reality, we should know how to do it, but that doesn't
We
mean that we
we
do.
do kind of know what we're
Yeah,
supposed to
but
do.
that doesn't mean that we do because we can shoulda ourselves to death
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And
Yeah.
that's not helpful either.
No, no, because that creates a lot of negative energy that we really don't need.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
totally.
So then putting that same thing in a perspective on some business owners, then, getting into a routine, I kind of, thinking back on what you were talking about earlier, we have to get into a routine of just checking in and reflecting
Mhm.
on where we're at in our business, like where we're going, what kind of needs to be shifting. What do
Yeah.
people look for in the business aspect when things kind of don't get so exciting anymore?
Well, I think, again, I'm just going to say this again.
Yep.
I think what you have to do is when you're noticing that those thoughts and feelings are coming up, and look, every
Mhm.
entrepreneur has been there.
Yeah.
Everyone has. I don't care how
Yeah.
successful or how long you've been doing it. I think when that keeps coming up, I think you have to give yourself a little grace and give yourself a moment to actually look at it and get
Hmm.
really real and honest with yourself and say,
Hmm.
why does this keep coming up? Don't overthink it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. It doesn't mean that things are falling apart.
Right.
It just means
Right.
that maybe it's time for a little introspection.
Hmm.
And the longer that, there's a saying out there, what you resist persists.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you have days or weeks or months where you're just like, this isn't cutting it anymore, but I'll just think about it later, or I've got, or whatever. The
Hmm.
longer that you do that, the longer it's going to hang around.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, then the longer it's literally going to have control over you.
Hmm.
So I think
Hmm.
what you have to do is you have to give yourself time to think about, where you want to go from there. What would really be fun for me to do? What is it
Yeah.
that I really
Yeah.
love about my work? What do I really believe is possible for me? And
Hmm.
if everything worked out the way that I wanted it, here's a great question that I love to ask myself. Everything worked out perfect and there were no
Hmm.
roadblocks or no problems. What would I be doing?
Hmm.
What would I really love to do in my business? What would
Right.
I really love to do for my clients? That's how I got started doing retreats because I was like, this is fun, you
Yeah.
know, and I can make money and make it part of my business too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting twist. We really have to, again, stop, ask
Yep.
ourselves some questions,
Yeah.
really kind of dig into your why, dig in, align with what you're kind of going for,
Hmm.
and then, package it a little bit
Hmm.
differently.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
Because,
think you have to give yourself that time in the month to have time to do that. I
Hmm.
think a lot of business owners just kind of think, well, I'll do it when I have time, but you have to schedule it like it's an appointment. Just
Yeah.
like you schedule your workout like it's an appointment. You schedule
Right.
your activity breaks like they're appointments. Um,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
literally have to think of it like that because it's an appointment with yourself.
Yeah. And that's a really good point because when we make appointments,
Hmm.
we stick to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Whether
and the
it's a
way I like to
doctor, a
tell my
dentist,
clients is, what I
fitness
like
or
to tell,
anything.
yeah, what I like to tell my clients is schedule it like it's an appointment that you would really think twice about rescheduling. And think about that. Like, think about it like it's a doctor's appointment. We're going to
Hmm.
think twice before we try to reschedule that because it's such a pain to get back in, right?
Right.
Think
Right.
about it. When you reschedule, getting your hair done, same thing,
Right. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. You have to think of it like this is a really important appointment.
Hmm.
Why should appointments with yourself be any less important than appointments that you make with other people?
Right. Right.
You know?
Exactly. And if we don't take time each month to kind of reevaluate what's going to happen, what's it going to look like, it's not going to look any prettier, next month.
Well, we
Okay.
we teach other people how to treat us too. So we have to be looking at that too. Now, I'm not
Mm.
saying, I mean, if you're in a, I'm in a service-based industry, you're in a service-based industry, we have to put our clients' needs, in front. But that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that we have to ignore everything that we want to do just to make sure that we get everything done. If that's the case, then you need to take a hard look at what you're doing in your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're not going to be doing it very long because you're going to
That's
be burned
right.
out.
Yeah. And not to mention, it's just not sustainable.
Right.
It just doesn't work. You might be able to do it for a while. I know I
Right.
did when I had my first studio. That was kind of my mentality. I was like, I'm just going
Mhm.
to work harder and get it done. And it
Yeah.
works for a little while, but it works only until it stops working, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you break down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Where can listeners find out more about what you do, your programs, your retreats? Those are really interesting. I would love those
Yeah.
in-person mixtures. So where can
Yeah.
I get find out more about you?
You can go head over to my website, www.theallisonk.com.
Okay.
And basically everything is there. You can check out our retreats. You can get, if you go to my homepage, there'll be a pop-up window that'll pop up once you start scrolling down that will put you on my mailing list so that you can get my Friday newsletter. It's called 5 Minute Fridays. And
Okay.
it's basically 5 things that I share every Friday.
Nice.
So,
Right.
so that's a good thing. I would also love for anyone listening to check out my podcast. We have two,
Yes.
and you can read about those on my website as well.
Okay. And what are those names just for people to
The Ultimate Journey of Self-Care is our Tuesday flagship show.
Okay.
And then our Thursday show is called Creating the World's Best Client Experience, and it's more around business stuff like events, retreats, all of that. So,
Okay, awesome. Well,
yeah.
I'll put the links to those in the show notes so listeners can easily just grab those. And so, as we wrap up today, is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with? Any thoughts, quotes that maybe we haven't said or you want to say that you haven't?
Um, I think what I'll do is, and you'll find this quote on my website. This was a quote that I had on kind of a piece of acrylic that I found at a yard sale when I was a grad student, and it jumped out to me like that. And for the life of
Mhm.
me, I can't figure out what I did with it, but I remember what it says. It
Right.
says, the reason that most people fail instead of succeed is that they give up what they want most for what they want now.
Mm,
So that's just kind of a reminder that you have to stay really focused on what it is that you want and know
yes.
that there are going to be things that come up along the way that challenge you, that try to push you off course, that get you doubting yourself. But
Mhm.
you have to understand that if you have an idea and a vision, you're getting that idea and a vision for a reason.
Right. Right. Yes.
You know?
That is in you for a reason. God has planted that in you. And
Hmm.
what you want the most, you need to go for it.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of just sacrificing our future
Hmm.
for the now. And we
Yeah,
can we can give many examples of that. We've already
totally.
kind of gone through some of those in this podcast, but that is such a powerful quote because we do have to remember our why and what it is we want in the future. And sometimes we need to make sacrifices in the moment
Totally. Yeah, we
and
do.
in order to get that.
And sometimes they're
Oftentimes we
hard
do.
sacrifices. Sometimes they're
Right.
things that maybe we don't know that we're really willing to do, but we have to
Right.
look at it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today,
Yeah, of
Allison.
course.
It has been such a great refresher to get back to the basics,
Hmm.
but we all need those reminders because we
Yeah.
want something flashy, but really the
Hmm.
foundational pieces are
Totally.
really what's going to keep us moving forward. So
Yep.
thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you.